All right, well, hello everybody, and welcome back. Today is October 7th, and this is Master Advisor number 39. We're going to be talking about romance, honeymoon, and destination wedding travel today with Jamie Mussolini. And I'm very excited, but as always, I just want to get us through some announcements. The first is that for everyone on Zoom, please head into speaker view. That will be the best way to watch today's session. The next is that the chat on the bottom right is open, and please drop any questions and comments in there. We'll try to get to as many as possible as always, and the ones we don't get to, we'll try to catch up after the session. For those of you watching on Facebook Live, we also are monitoring that chat, so please don't be shy in there either. You can drop questions and comments in there, and again, we'll do our best to grab them as we go along today. If you are watching on Facebook or watching this on YouTube, where we host all of our video and audio content, including our podcast check-in, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That helps us a whole lot to help growing this community of travel advisors and sort of keeping the ball rolling. And just a reminder to everyone on this session today that we'll be hosting this full episode on our YouTube and on travelmarketreport.com after we wrap up today. So if you want to rewatch today's session or watch old ones, like our last episode on building liability waivers with Chun Wright, please head over there and subscribe. There's really a lot over there at this point. We've done sessions on liability waivers. We've done several sessions on building a fee structure. We've done one on apps travel advisors need to know about. It's all free content on demand there. So please head over there when you have time and when you're looking to do some learning. All right, so we have a few more people in the waiting room, but they're going to join as we go along today. So let's go ahead and introduce our guests. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Jamie Mussolini, the founder and president of Westchester-based Beachfronts Travels. I'm going to let Jamie tell us a little bit about her background, but I do want to list just a few of her accomplishments before I pass it over to her. She's a member of the Destination Wedding and Honeymoon Specialists Association. She's also a multiple-time member of the Knot.com's Best of list. And she's appeared on a number of major top travel agent lists by other travel trades throughout her career. So welcome, Jamie. I want to say thank you so much for joining me here today and sharing your knowledge with everybody.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to get into the topic of the day, but I want to give you an opportunity to sort of tell us a little bit about your background, including how you got into the industry and what kind of trips and what kind of niche do you typically serve?
So I've been in the industry for 15 years. I grew up going to Disney World every year with my family, and just from there, loved the idea of planning and researching and finding all the happy moments that we could have with my three younger siblings. And from there, I started working in a family-owned financial firm where I had many roles. One of them was planning travel and corporate and luxury types of travel. And so I had the pleasure of finding the next best destination for the family to travel and the next hotspot. And then from there, putting together just every part of every moment, every step they would take to take this trip, and just being there for any hiccups or what would go wrong, and just be ready for any changes last minute. So it kind of gave me the experience of working with the discerning needs of a luxury traveler. And then I decided to start Beachfronts Travel in 2007. And I actually had my own destination wedding and honeymoon in Turks and Caicos.
Oh, wow.
And then it was every bride and travel agent's nightmare because I was faced with Hurricane Tomas coming 3 days before my big day. So I had to just reimagine my big wedding day and deal with guests that couldn't get there and last minute changes, and just good thing I have an attribute of multitasking and dealing with problem solving. So I was able to get through it, and it turned out to be a beautiful day. Of course, a few guests couldn't end up actually making it. But from there, when I got home, I was left with this mark in my head that I had to go out there and say, how could any bride want to do all of this themselves and then have to deal with a family member calling them at the last minute that they can't get there, or someone saying, how can I get to the hotel from the airport? Just why wouldn't they want to use a travel advisor for all of these needs? So I felt that this is something that I wanted to start doing. And in the same year, I actually met a woman who owned a popular wedding invitation company in town. And she asked if I was interested in meeting couples at her storefront on the weekends and advertising in her store. So I started doing that, and just being fresh in the romance travel myself, I
Yeah.
really had like my heart and soul into planning each one of their honeymoons, which they just, all of them seemed to be so happy with their experience that I gave them. And from there, I really started getting into doing weddings and honeymoons. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I mean, having your wedding, I know pre-COVID, hurricanes was just such an issue in the Caribbean in August and September, and hurricane seasons was always sort of a big headline season for everybody. And having your first one of your first weddings you planned, your own wedding, having been impacted by a hurricane is a strange start, I guess, but it's definitely worked out for you.
yes, and it was also actually in November, which
Okay.
is out of the hurricane season.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to get into the topic of the day. I'm curious though, we have about 63 people on the call with us, and I'm curious how many of you are a part of this niche? How many of you make this niche as a part of your business on a consistent basis? Just so we can get a sense of who's on the call and what questions are coming in. But I do want to ask you, Jamie, before we get into honeymoon and romance travel, something we touched upon just before this call, and something that's always on topic for travel advisors and travelers is the passport situation. And a couple months ago, we heard these reports that we were getting we were getting significant delays that kept coming regardless of how we were moving through COVID. And you actually had an experience with your client that I was hoping you could share with everyone on the call today, and then maybe they could take some advice and then some wisdom from that.
Sure. Recently, everyone knows about the problems that have been going on with passports. You can no longer go on the website and just fill out a form to try to get a last minute appointment. If you're traveling within 2 weeks, you need to call and wait on hold for hours. I recently had an experience with a client that moved their honeymoon 4 times because of COVID, and thought all was well. 3 weeks before they were traveling, they realized that their passport was going to expire about 1 month within their travel date, and basically called me with a crisis of what do I do? So they were able to actually set up a last minute appointment. They did have to drive from New York to Vermont, because the local offices are so backed up and really don't have any appointments available. So they were able to successfully get their passport, but it's definitely something that could be common with someone that moved their trip so much, not realizing to double check things at the last minute. As much as you tell them, they're just not thinking of that protocol constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Again, I think it's going to be a recurring situation for a lot of travel advisors, and I'm sure we could do a whole session on the passport issue. But I do want to talk about destination weddings, honeymoon travel, romance travel today, because that's the topic. And I see in the chat that we do have a lot of experienced travel advisors on the call who have been selling this kind of travel. A lot of people doing destination weddings, some people just starting out in the niche. So it's great to have everyone on board, and hopefully we can have a lot of great conversations today about it. So let's get into it. I know a lot of these definitions of these kind of travel are fairly straightforward, but I'm curious if you could just give us a loose definition of romance travel, because that might be the one that's not super obvious or super clear to a lot of the advisors on the call.
So romance travel is an intimate travel experience, usually with two people. It can extend to baby moons, honeymoons, destination weddings, anniversary travel, just your simple romantic getaway.
Yeah, the baby moon one, that seems to be one that's been trending the past few years. Is that something you've seen? You've seen a lot of that kind of travel become more popular amongst your clients?
Yes,
Yeah.
clients feel that they want to get one last romantic trip with just the two of them before they have to share their time with someone else.
Okay. So I'm curious, what's the demand like for this kind of travel? I know COVID's impacted every single segment in the industry, and I know a lot of them are coming back online now. A lot of them are coming back online now pretty fast and furious. But what have you heard from clients? What kind of trips are they really wanting to take right now?
So it's definitely more demanding, especially because everybody's been home for so long. People just want to get out there and travel for sure. At this time, couples have been so just engulfed in postponing and having so many disappointments that they're faced with, that they are very anxious to actually take that honeymoon. It's they used to be in a mindset where you would set dates and say, I'm going on my honeymoon on these dates and this is my destination, and it would be just all happy thoughts from there. And now they've had to get comfortable with the thought that, this is the way it is. We're not sure, okay, these are the dates we're moving it to, but we're not sure if we're actually going to be able to go. So we'll have to see what happens. That's like the big phrase with everyone. We'll see how it goes.
So I imagine that on your end, that's caused a lot of rebookings, a lot of rescheduling, a lot of changing trips to different destinations and things like that. I imagine that the honeymoon seemed like a kind of trip people are going to take, but it seems a lot of it seems to fall on your shoulders to figure out how and when and where.
Yes, we've had a lot of changes. I've had clients move their honeymoons, 3 to 4 times. Destination weddings are a big challenge with the situation, due to the fact that a bride has looked forward to her big day, and then her big day, the date has to actually change. And as well as some of her guests had to cancel. And in the end, maybe they will rebook last minute and be able to go. But some of them have been faced with guests that couldn't go because they they were in the middle of starting a family, or they took on a new job and they really couldn't attend for them anymore. So there's been a lot of last minute disappointments for these couples. It is very challenging to have a destination wedding at this time.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm curious again. I know we had a lot of the advisors on the call who do this kind of travel. Yeah, are you all hearing the same thing? Is it again? It's a lot of rescheduling and a lot of changes on those kind of itineraries. I'm curious in the chat if we could hear from you all. But you mentioned sort of the new world or the new world of travel, and I know there are always the big significant destinations for honeymoons and destination weddings. But I mean, what are you hearing now from your clients? Have those kind of tastes changed? Are other destinations more popular now when it comes to this kind of travel, whether it's romance or honeymoons or destination weddings?
The Caribbean is definitely popular.
Yeah.
I would say also Hawaii was popular, but now we're having some situations there, so it's kind of died down a little bit. But of course, the East Coast, US, Virgin Islands is popular. People are still, during the summer, we're venturing to go to Europe and had honeymoons that had been moved. And they were successfully able to go. I would say that I did have a handful of clients that wanted to have a mini moon, something that if they had to move their Europe honeymoon about 3 times, that they planned a mini moon because they wanted to definitely guarantee that they were having some kind of honeymoon if they had another disappointment.
So I mean, that's the first time I've heard that term, a mini moon. Can you? So that I guess that seems like a smaller version of the honeymoon you wanted, and maybe you delay the big one later when things maybe return back to normal. Is that correct?
Yes. So the mini moon is a local destination, somewhere drivable or a very short flight, just for maybe 3 nights or so, a romantic setting, and they package it with, let's say, beach cabanas or a private intimate dinner on the beach somewhere, special spa treatment. They add on things that make it feel really romantic, and it's not too far from home, and you don't need a passport to go. And then at least they feel that they have this memory, and they can still look forward to possibly the other honeymoon happening. But if it doesn't, at least they've had something together right after their wedding.
Yeah, I imagine if you have to delay a honeymoon a year or two after the wedding, it probably feels a bit different. So the mini moons, I guess, yeah, that seems to be a trend now, according to you. But that's great. We were just talking about destinations, and just because COVID has again changed so many things in the industry, are there any new destinations that aren't typically a part of this category that are starting to trend that way? You mentioned sort of some of the domestic places, closer to home places. Are those a new kind of destinations you're seeing that are getting interest from your clients?
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say the local driving destinations, the Northeast.
Well,
Um,
you're in Westchester. So what close, I guess, close
I
to your
mean,
clients, what would be the typical destination?
it would be, let's say, Massachusetts, Rhode
Okay.
Island, the Hamptons, Maryland.
Okay. And so I see a lot of comments in the chat. Um, I see Neil Miller says he's booking a lot of honeymoons, Mexico honeymoons for 21 and 22. And then we're seeing some people saying cancellations due to the uncertainty about travel restrictions are happening into 21 and 22. And there's a lot of questions about guests being concerned whether or not their wedding party will need to be vaccinated, things like that. So clearly there's a ton of concerns from everywhere, and this category is very much in need of the advice of a travel advisor. I think hopefully it's going to be a boom for everyone in the segment. But I do want to ask about the bigger destinations. You talked about Hawaii. We have a couple other people in the chat talking about the bigger destinations. Are you getting a lot of questions from clients about how COVID will impact them? And I mean, what kind of questions are they? Are they about capacity? Are they about vaccination requirements or mask requirements, or is it generally all the above?
I would say all of the above, especially mask requirements. They're also concerned with curfews. Will they actually be able to go to dinner, at 8:30 at night, or are they going to have to go at 6 o'clock because everything closes by 8? That's definitely a big concern with any destination.
What big destinations are requiring curfews right now?
Right now, Antigua was trying to implement a curfew of the beach itself, actually, which I think they had a lot of pushback on. That had changed a little bit. There are some curfews still in Greece, I believe, at night.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Again, I'm sure that would be, especially in wedding, I'm sure that would be a big issue. So I want to get off the topic of COVID and destinations, and I want to talk about actually building this kind of business, which is something you're clearly very well versed in, and I know a lot of the advisors on the chat are going to want to hear about it too. Um, I'm curious, when you started off this business, when you realized that this could be a niche that's successful for you, how did you go about building a client base and finding clients to sort of welcome into your client pool?
A big part of it was being partnered with other wedding vendors and, doing events together and meeting together and kind of sharing clients and introducing each other to other clients. I also would advertise in local media and also in the wedding invitation shop that I would go to. So that's where I met a lot of couples. I also did a lot of bridal shows, which I think are always helpful. So I was able to build a pretty good client base, and from there, I had received a lot of referrals and word of mouth. Usually, in the normally the brides have a lot of friends that are getting married or in the same state they are, so they're happy to refer you to their friends and family.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It does seem, I mean, it does seem to come in waves. The friend groups who are all getting married at the same time.
I
You met,
also I do belong to a few Facebook bridal groups where new brides join every day, and I welcome them and congratulate them on their engagement and offer my services to them.
okay. Oh, okay. So we've actually done a couple sessions on Facebook groups, and that seems to be that seems to be something you're able to use too. Even with this sort of niche, is Facebook groups seem to be successful for you.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Um, so you mentioned referrals, and I'm curious because again, that's something we've spoke about in the past, and referrals seem to be a big part of so many advisors building their business. Is that something you actively ask clients for? Is it for referrals, or is it something you just point out to them? Maybe I know a couple of advisors who I speak to on the regular have it on their email signature. But is that something you actively go out and seek? Is referrals from clients who you know you've done a good job for?
In the past, I haven't so much. Now, after COVID, I feel that I just mention it to them to say, if you have any friends or family, I always am so happy to receive referrals. If you want to refer me, that would be great.
Okay. So let me grab a question from the chat because I see a ton coming in. I see a lot of comments too. We have a comment from an advisor who says they've experienced that Jamaica has a 50-person group size limit right now, and they've had to cancel for a wedding in May 2022 because of the uncertainty. We have some question. We have another comment about Mexico. Cancun has a curfew of 11 p.m. So it's kind of it's important to keep an eye out on that. We have a question, and I'm not sure if this is something you're familiar with, Jamie, but this seems like an appropriate question. One advisor wants to know, as part of the market, whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, are cruise lines, whether it's ocean ships and river ships, do they get their fair share of this market, or is that something you're not super familiar with?
I don't do a lot of cruises, to be honest, but I'm sure that they do. I do know a few colleagues in the industry that do work with cruises and they have planned weddings on them.
And then we have a couple more questions that I'm going to grab before we get back into what we have scheduled for today. We have a question about the referrals we spoke about, and I guess this is a good question to know about client relationships and sort of keeping that relationship firm. Michelle asks if you send a gift to the wedding couple, and do you give it to them prior to their honeymoon or when they return? And what type of gift, if you do send a gift, do you usually think about?
I usually don't send a gift at home. I usually send something when they get to the property. I definitely, every client that I have traveling, I always reach out to the hotel itself and let them know that my clients are arriving, what they're celebrating. And I always, because it doesn't hurt to ask, say if you can offer them a great view with the category they've booked, or if you have an upgrade, that's great.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I write a personalized note and I send them something special, such as a champagne or wine or chocolate. I send balloons, something to the spa. It kind of varies with the personality of the client and what I think they would enjoy most.
Okay, yeah, and I imagine that helps you build your relationship with the clients, and it's most likely a pleasant surprise for them when they see a gift come in from you.
Yeah, and it's something that's away from home. So they get so many gifts at the wedding here and for showers and things like that, that I feel like there's nothing being given to them when they're away. So it's just nice to have a surprise when you get there.
Okay. So we have a lot of questions coming in, and I think we're gonna get to most of them. But they're all super relevant, which is nice to see because sometimes we tend to get off topic in the chat, but today we have a lot of great questions. And one of them is sort of about building the wedding, especially now. And Annie wants to know, where do you find or where do you keep track of all the information about paper needs to official weddings in other countries? I guess when you're doing a destination wedding, how do you make sure the actual wedding ceremony is done the right way with all the paperwork and things like that outside of the US?
The legal documentation.
Yes.
I usually do refer directly to the country because you never know of any changes. And I do find all the information there. The resort that you work with normally gives you all the information that you need, but it's always good to double check that it's in line with what the country is asking for.
Then we have one more question, and this is from Agatha. She said she's getting anniversary trips ready for 2022, and she wants to know if you have any recommendations for silver couples, which is a silver. I'm not sure which anniversary that is. That might be the 50th anniversary, and correct me if I'm wrong, Agatha. But do you have any recommendations for any destinations for 20? It's 25. Angela told me it's 20. It's 25 years. So 25-year couples anywhere you would comes to mind where you would present to them, Jamie?
Is there a specific time of year they would be going, or
We'll
just
we'll see if Agatha wants to answer. We have someone in the chat who's on her 25th and she's going on a cruise, so congratulations to you. But we'll wait till Agatha can get back to us, and maybe we'll jump back to that question. We have another question from Amanda in there, but I want to move on. Okay, so Agatha says spring or summertime.
okay. I like Aruba for 25 years. There's a lot to do there. There's a lot of great restaurants. It does seem to be popular for that celebration, and it's not that far away. You're not going to Europe or something like that. Um, it tends to be popular with that crowd.
Okay. So we have another question. Amanda, I'll try to get back to you at the end. And again, we have about 20 minutes or so left, so please drop questions in the chat, and I'm going to grab a couple more as we go along every few minutes. But Jamie, I'm curious because you mentioned the gifts you send them during their wedding or during their honeymoon. What is your client relationship building pattern like after the honeymoon? How do you maintain a relationship with those clients? Because clearly they're embarking on a life, and there's a lot of travel to be done in their future. And I'm curious if you have a routine to make sure that you maintain that relationship and you continue to be able to book their travel.
Well, my clients get to know me very quickly when it comes to me taking them on as a client and planning their first trip, let's say. And they know that I'm fully invested in them and I care about every moment that's going on with them planning this special trip. So when they get back, they know that I will be reaching out to them and saying, how was your trip? Welcome back. Because the reason that I know that they know is because I receive an email that's like 1 to 2 pages long with photos attached, and just it's a really kind email that I really enjoy getting. And then from there, I would say that they just basically say to me that when we're going to be traveling in the future, we're going to be contacting you. And if we have friends and family, we will send them your way. And with the romance travel niche, it's a little tricky sometimes because the clients could be at the stage where they're just having their first child or buying their new home. So you may not hear from them for a while, but they do come back. I had a client that I recently planned a trip to Hawaii for, that I had planned their destination wedding 6 years ago, and they hadn't taken the trip since then. But after COVID, they found the need to really want to get away. And it was an amazing experience for them going to Hawaii.
That must feel nice for you as an agency owner to get that email from someone you've had a relationship with for 6 years, and they're
Absolutely.
finally ready to travel. Yeah, and they want you to plan it for them.
Yeah, it is really nice.
Yeah. So again, we have some more questions, Jamie, and I don't want to grab every single question, but I'm gonna grab a couple more. Richard wants to know your neighbor agency, which is Beachfronts Travel, right?
Beachfronts Travel, yes.
Okay. And then Raylan wants to know, do you stay in touch with the guests between the time they book and the time you are sending out their travel documents? What kind of engagement do you do to keep them excited about their trips?
I do plan their dinners, spa reservations, excursions. So I am in constant contact with them, checking in, especially as it gets closer, 2 months out, as close to the day before, just to check if they want to add anything else. Especially now with COVID, I am on top of getting in touch with them. I email them the day that they're supposed to get their COVID test, and even a week before that, just sending them a reminder, because I want to make sure that they don't miss any window that needs to be taken care of in order to travel.
Yeah, that especially these destinations, because we're getting notifications from different Caribbean countries all the time about testing requirements changing, and Hawaii seems to be another destination that's constantly changing. That seems to be super important to be on top of with your clients and to give them that kind of practical advice. So you do it when they're tested, when they need to be tested, and 3 days before that as well.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I think that's good advice for all the advisors on the call.
And it's, of course, essential to just keep constantly checking. If you have anyone traveling within a week, just keep constantly checking any changes with the destinations. Because I know recently I had an experience with Turks and Caicos. They last minute decided to enforce vaccinations and only gave us about a 2-week window. And I had clients traveling in a group, and one of them had only the first shot, and the country wouldn't accept them with just one shot, even though they physically couldn't get the second shot because the doctor said they couldn't get it for 3 weeks. So they had to change to a different destination.
So you had to change the whole group to a different destination. Wow. So let me ask you, because this is such a special niche, and it is one that a lot of advisors on the call are also a part of. I want to ask you about your own personal business and how you dictate to your clients and what your philosophies are. I'm curious if you can give us two important traits that you think have helped you throughout your career and helped you build this levels of success that you have right now.
I would say being a good listener is really important, and determination. Especially with this niche, you really have to be a good listener, because sometimes these brides just need somebody to talk to, and they need someone to talk through it, or they could have had a crisis that day with their flower department or something like that. And they really need someone to hear them out. And sometimes it takes a little longer, but it's worth it in the end, because they really do value the care that you give them. And I say determination because I'm the type of person that I will turn over every stone to make happen what they want to happen, what they vision this trip to be like.
Are there you listening to the bride? What important things are there to look out for or to make note of that maybe some people might think aren't super important when they're on the call, when they're communicating with their client? What things do you usually look out for, or usually make sure that you take note of to build the kind of experience that they want built from you?
Well, I always ask them, I definitely listen to everything they say and don't put too much comment into that, but I definitely first ask them what they vision their honeymoon to be like or their wedding to be like, where it is that they had their heart set on going, and how I could bring it to become a reality for them.
Um, I'm curious in the chat if there are any go-to questions for you all when you have that consulting call or that initial call with a prospect. Are there any go-to questions that you ask that would be helpful for everybody in the chat too? So I'm curious because we've spoken so much about niches during COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. How much of your business is this particular niche, romance travel and destination weddings and honeymoons? Is it a huge part of your business, and is it a hugely profitable part of your business too?
It is definitely a huge part of my business. The other part would be the constant travel that I do plan for them going forward, such as regular vacations and referrals from that. But the niche is definitely something that I do specialize in.
Yeah. And then when you're able to sort of welcome these clients back after a honeymoon, after a wedding, what percentage does repeat for you? What percentage keeps using your services going forward as they build their lives together and possibly build a family?
I would say it's hard to give a number for that. I would say most of the clients do come back. Like I said, if they don't, it's usually because they have something going on in their lives, such as starting a family or buying a house. But eventually, you will hear from a friend of theirs that they may have referred you to, and you may not hear from them. So it kind of varies.
So we have a question about the DWHSA, which I mentioned you are a part of when I gave your introduction. I'm curious, what kind of support does that organization or association provide to you, and would you recommend other advisors on the call look into that if they want to continue their careers in this niche?
I would definitely recommend it. They provide a lot of information updates with resorts. You do have a private Facebook group that you will learn a lot about the organization. You'll learn about other people that belong to it, what types of weddings they're booking, types of clients that they're dealing with, different experiences that they've had. So it is helpful.
Okay. Okay. So we have some comments about what questions usually are pretty good to ask people, to ask brides or couples as you start planning their travel. Neil Miller says he asks, what hotels or resorts have you stayed at most recently to gauge where I start my resort research? Barb says, who, what, when, where, why. Their past travel experiences both go together and separately. Are there experiences they've wanted to do for a while? what's the most important aspect of their trip, whether it's location of property or class of airfare or things like that. But you mentioned, Jamie, it seems like the sun destinations are the biggest destinations for this kind of travel. I know you mentioned Europe for honeymoons, and of course Europe's big for everyone sort of in North America, but it has traditionally been sun destinations, correct?
It was huge for a long time, and then it switched over, and I was doing so much Europe and so much Australia and New Zealand, and now it's kind of reversed back to Caribbean and Mexico and Hawaii and US destinations. So it's interesting how it's changed.
And we have another member of DWHSA, Jenny Schaefer, who says she recommends it too, and she put the link in the chat for everyone if they want to check it out. But you mentioned Europe. I mean, was it Europe's typically was it mostly Italy and sort of again the poster boys for that kind of European travel from North America? Was it Italy, France, things like that?
Italy, Greece, England, Paris, France. Yeah.
And then we have a question about Mexico from Yolanda in the chat. She just wants to know if you recommend Mexico as a destination. And I guess if you do recommend it, what would clients want to be looking for you to suggest Mexico as a possible destination for them?
I do like Mexico. There's a lot of amazing resorts there. There's a lot of different areas that you can explore. The only holdback I do have with it slightly is if somebody really wants like a white sanded beach and a beautiful beach, sometimes there are cases with seaweed in Mexico. So it depends on the client's wants and needs with the beach, I would say.
That's something I don't think a lot of advisors or a lot of people looking outside this niche would think about is making sure there's a white sand beach and making sure the seaweed season isn't ruining those kind of photos, because the photo seems super important. So the location probably has to be just as important, right?
Right.
And
I mean, the wedding I have on the homepage of my website was done in Mexico, but it looks beautiful there.
What's your website? I'm sure everybody wants to head to it right now.
It's beachfrontstravel.com.
Okay. So for you to get that kind of knowledge, to know when like small details like that, like when things are going to be impacting the weddings, like seaweed. How do you do your research? Is it a lot of talking to your supplier contacts? Is it a lot of destination visits and fam trips and things like that?
It's taking my own trips, talking to suppliers, even belonging on some of the travel Facebook groups and hearing from other advisors and other colleagues in the industry, even staying in touch with the resorts and the sales managers and getting the latest information on the resorts and the situation is the best thing to do.
And are there any other little details, like again, maybe I'm concentrating too much on the sand, but are there any other little details that you just make sure you know before you recommend or before you book a big trip like this for one of your clients? Food
is definitely a big category.
Okay.
You want to know if your client is a foodie, if the food really, some people will say, we're not picky with the food. We're not foodies. It's fine. Some people will say we are obsessed with having amazing food. So it kind of depends on the client's preferences.
Okay. And is that it again? It just comes down to you being able to experience that firsthand, or you knowing other maybe a colleague or someone who's experienced firsthand and can make that solid recommendation for you?
Sure. And it always helps to look at the ratings of the resort. Any write-ups or news articles are always helpful to keep in the back of your mind, just so you kind of can look at everything in one big picture.
Okay. All right, so we have a little less than 10 minutes left. I know we had a ton of questions. We went through them. I see more coming in the chat. If you have any more, please drop them in there, and we're going to do our best to get to them. Again, we have another question about a destination, Jamie, and maybe you could help Michelle out. She just wants to, again, it's another basic question is, would you recommend the Bahamas for a destination wedding or honeymoon?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And why would the Bahamas sort of be a good choice?
It's not, depending on, I'm not sure where she's based. For me, being in the close to the New York area, it's not a long flight to get there. It's not a huge island. You can leave the resort and feel safe. There's different areas to explore. There's a lot of excursions to take advantage of. pictures will be beautiful.
Okay. All right. So again, we have less than 10 minutes left. So any more questions, drop them in. But I have a couple more I want to ask about. And one is what we spoke about is we spoke about finding wedding prospects and we spoke about referrals. I'm curious, when you do plan a group like a destination wedding, do you do anything different to sort of make it known to the guests that you're in business as a travel advisor, that you can book their travel? Are you ever looking to get referrals from the wedding guests? Is that something you look to when you have these big groups?
Sure, I'm happy to take on their travel needs as long as they want me to. I find that it's common with destination weddings. You can have a bunch of guests that haven't taken a big trip in a long time, or ever used a travel agent. So once they start talking to you, it's like an open door that you can keep retaining them to book their future trips. I've had plenty of guests continue to use me. For example, a guest that was at a wedding retained me for a Alaskan cruise, which I was a huge it was a huge land trip. It was like a 20-day trip. And then they planned a trip with their grandkids and their kids as a group to go to a resort in Turks and Caicos a couple years later. So you can keep them just as long as any other client. It's all about the experience you give them.
Yeah, and I guess it never hurts to ask for that referral too, or ask for that business when you're speaking to these clients. I'm curious, just because you mentioned that, is your practice to be on site for every destination wedding you plan?
No, I'm usually not on site.
We have a couple more comments. I'm gonna grab these, and then if there's no more questions, I'm gonna let Jamie wrap up. But we have a comment from Neil. I guess this is about the Mexico recommendation. I wish I could pronounce the name of the city in Mexico, but it's Altier Playa Mujeres, Mexico. He says it's a beautiful white sandy beach, no or minimal seaweed due to the government buffering the seaweed, and he says 5-star service and the best food. Richard says it's very important that we check COVID requirements before booking a honeymoon for our clients, no matter what country that they want to go to, because it is constantly changing minute by minute. And then we have another comment.
What's more important is to keep checking that for the destination weddings, because it is definitely challenging to pick a destination. I'm working with a client right now, and it keeps changing. She was originally going to choose Antigua, and now they required the vaccination. She's not sure if she could put a requirement on all her guests, or if they're going to be vaccinated by then. It's hard. You don't want to close the door to not allow anybody to come to your wedding.
And has all these COVID impacts, all these requirements, these protocols, has this impacted how clients are booking their weddings, in particularly the booking window? Because we've heard so much about the booking window being either super compressed now or super way out into the future, that people think COVID won't be a big deal 2 or 3 years down the line. I'm curious, how has it impacted your segment? Has it changed the booking window at all?
The booking window for regular travel has definitely changed. It was definitely more rapid, last minute decisions to take big trips. For the weddings, I think it's mixed, depending on the different clients that I speak with. Some of them are booking within a year, some are booking within a year and a half. They do still want to always give their guests time to plan for attending their wedding, plan ahead for their travel, request dates off from work, things like that. It's important to them.
So we have a bunch of comments about planning fees, but I don't think we're going to get to those because we've covered planning fees a lot recently on TMR, and we can drop the link again in the chat for people who want to check out the old planning fees videos. I think our latest one was with Kristen Perry. But let me make sure. We have another comment about the seaweed issues in Mexico. But I wanna give you a chance to wrap up here, Jamie. I know we went through a lot today, and I want to see if there's anything else you want to add, or any parting thoughts you want to give us. And again, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know how busy you are, and I know we just spoke about the sort of chaos that's going on with travel advisors now, constantly having to rebook and book and rebook and book. So again, thank you so much for your time, and any last thoughts you want to share with everybody.
I would say that travel agents are really essential now, and our value is really coming to the table. And we are definitely being relied upon a lot more about those future clients out there.
Yeah. And again, like Jamie mentioned, I just want to reiterate, you never hurts to ask for referrals. That's something we've heard from a number of advisors on these calls, and the worst I guess you can hear is a no. And a lot of advisors on the call are just saying, Neil says we are valuable. Choose your clients wisely. And yeah. So again, thank you so much, Jamie. I
Thank you.
know I know we went through a lot today again, but thank you so much for your time. I want to say thank you to all who joined us today and participated in the chat. Hopefully, I'll see you all back here in a couple weeks. But until then, I hope you all have a very, very nice week and weekend. And for everyone in the U.S. who has Monday off because of Columbus Day, I hope you have a good holiday. And hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you.